Good morning, gamers.
Hello.
From teams who have been speedrunning for years to teams who just want to try out group optimization for the first time, speedrunning in Final Fantasy XIV is a competitive scene that is slowly gaining more and more competition and interest. So in this video, I'd like to introduce you to what speeds are, then give you a starting point by showing you how my team prepares and plans for a speed kill. To preface, there will be a bit of discussion about buff alignment, so if you haven't seen my last video, which gives an introduction to buff alignment, I'd highly recommend watching that one prior to watching this one, but that's up to you. So let's get into it. Speedruns, aka speeds in the context of raiding, refer to killing a boss as fast as possible in a team setting. This is mostly done in a savage raid setting, however speedrunning can be found in almost any PvE content across the game. Speeding a savage raid normally requires a static to play an optimized or meta composition and is only really competitive in a standard group composition consisting of 2 tanks, 2 healers, and 4 DPS. Now the reason I say this normally requires a meta composition is because your team doesn't necessarily need a meta comp to be competitive or dip your toes in speeds. However, players on speed teams look for any way they can squeeze out extra potency or damage in a fight. So if that means playing raid compositions that synergize well, then they will do it. But the key to speedrunning lies primarily in how well your team is able to utilize each other's cooldowns and adapt them to raid mechanics. So let's talk about how we do that. My team first starts by setting a hypothetical or goal kill time and builds backwards from there. This is usually just a realistic or slightly unrealistic estimate of how fast we think we can kill the boss. If you're new to speeding, this time estimate can fluctuate once you start to get consistent kills, so don't hesitate to adjust your estimated kill time. Again, it should be a kill time that you genuinely think is obtainable. In this tier's raid, P1S, we're estimating the boss could be killed around the 6:15 mark in patch 6.08. So with that estimated kill time, we then plan out our cooldowns and abilities as a team to get the most amount of uses and potency out of them. When doing this, everyone in the group needs to understand a couple of things about their cooldowns. The first being the duration of their cooldowns, or how long their cooldown takes to become available again. The second being how many times will they be able to use said cooldown in the estimated kill time. And the last being if a cooldown needs to be held for some reason, how long can they hold it before they lose a use of it. So to bring this back to our 6:15 P1S example, 2-minute cooldowns such as Chain Stratagem from Scholar, Ogi Namakiri from Samurai, or Living Shadow from Dark Knight, to name a few, will have the opportunity of being used 4 times in this fight. Once at the 0-minute or on pull, once at the 2-minute, once at the 4-minute, and once at the 6-minute. And on the same note, 1-minute cooldowns like Trick Attack from Ninja or No Mercy from Gunbreaker can be used 7 times within this 6-minute and 15-second kill time. So once we have an established kill time and we plan out the number of cooldowns we'll get to use, we start planning where we want to place these raid buffs and cooldowns to give our team the most amount of potency boost from buff alignment that we possibly can, while still making sure we aren't losing potency from holding our cooldowns so long that we lose a use. Now, P1S is a great example of a 0 downtime fight that just so happens to have a kill time that ends right after a 2-minute burst window. So what happens when you have an abnormal fight like P4S Part 1, for example? This is a little more tricky, but the starting point is the same. In P4S Part 1, my team inferred we would kill the boss before Pinax 2, which means we would be killing the boss prior to the 6-minute window. Or in other words, we would only get 3 uses of 2-minute buffs. So we opted to do a buff alignment of 0-3-5, meaning we send our cooldowns in the opener, then push our second set of 2-minute cooldowns back a minute to the 3-minute window instead of just using them on cooldown like we did in our P1S example. This worked for us in P4S Part 1 because we don't lose a use of our 2-minute cooldowns by holding them for a minute here, since the fight is only 5.5 minutes and we only get 3 uses of our 2-minute buffs. And this is a good example of using what the fight mechanics give you. During the 2-minute window in P4S Part 1, the Pinax mechanic happens. This persists through the entirety of the buff window and is pretty egregious since there's quite a bit of randomness involved. But since we understood how our buffs would align for our goal kill time, this allowed us to move our cooldowns out of the Pinax mechanic for free and place them at a spot that was not only a more relaxed part of the fight, but also realigned them with 1-minute buffs. So to summarize, we estimate our kill time, which to clarify is kind of just an estimated guess, a hypothesis. Then we figure out how many uses of our cooldowns we should get in that allotted amount of time. Then we plan where we want our cooldowns to be used based off of how many uses we will get and sometimes which mechanics they'll overlap with. So once we have our kill time and cooldown plan at least set up a little bit, we finally move on to where we want to use our limit break. It's kind of silly in my opinion, but limit break is a very important part of speeds. If your team does too much damage and kills a boss boss too quickly, like P1S for example, you may not even generate LB3 before the boss dies. So this is where limit break optimization comes into play. I have people ask me in my stream all the time, why are you taking all your gear off before the pull? Oh, well that's easy, it's because I play a cat girl. We do this to generate extra limit break gauge for what is essentially free. Aside from passive generation from just fighting the boss, our largest forms of limit break generation come from two sources. The first being mitigating lethal damage, or in other words, mitigating damage that would have killed you if you didn't have shields on you or mitigations on the boss. And the second being healing people who are below 10% health to above 10% health, or in other words, healing people from critical health to non-critical health. And we can use these two concepts to our advantage in speeds, especially in the opener, because most bosses start off with a raid-wide AoE relatively early in a fight. In P2S, for example, the first raid-wide happens at 15 seconds and it hits for around 25 to 30,000 damage. In my full best of slot gear for Samurai, I have just over 60,000 hit points in a raid setting with food. So for me to get to critical HP, I need to be at about 6,000 hit points or less after the raid-wide happens so that I'm in the critical HP range and can generate LB by being healed to above 10%. So if we unequip and re-equip our gear prior to pulling the boss, you'll see that our health is really low. This is often called gear cheesing and is a way to start a fight with relatively low or lower health than just pulling the boss normally. Now you can't just pull the boss and heal yourself back to full, that won't do anything. The boss actually has to do damage to you before you're able to generate LB off of your health threshold. But now all we have to do is make sure the damage we take from the boss is greater than the health we have, and that's where healer shields and tank mitigation are used. And remember, we need to mitigate lethal damage, or in other words, survive damage taken that surpasses the amount of health we have left. So if we don't generate LB off the first initial hit because we were either too high health or we passively generated our health back too quickly before the raid wide went out, then we can use the second method of being healed up after the raid wide while we are critical health. But preferably, we want to use both of these methods at the same time and watch our LB gauge tick up. And this is why we take off our gear before the pull and why you will usually see our health low throughout a fight. Or you may even see us die from time to time because we miss a mitigation or something while trying to generate LB off a random mechanic. So I know this is probably a lot to absorb, especially thinking back on how much I just talked, but I hope this was at least able to help give you and your team a reference to go off of if getting into speeds is something you're interested in. Speeding in Final Fantasy XIV is a group effort, and it requires everyone to put aside their own personal goals and interests for the common goal of the team. And the team play is what makes speeding in Final Fantasy XIV one of my favorite forms of in-game content. So if you want to bring a game to the next level, and in my opinion really learn how to play Final Fantasy XIV, grab some gamers, set a goal, and give it a try. The amount of knowledge and flexibility you will gain as a player might surprise you. As always, if you have any questions or need clarification on anything, feel free to leave a comment below or drop by one of my Twitch streams or join my Discord server, and I'd be more than happy to do what I can to help out. We hit 500 subscribers this week, so thank you so much for everyone who has been following me and supporting my videos and commenting and hanging out on Twitch. It seriously means so much to me that my content has been able to help people improve or give people a reference or guide to get started on their journey of becoming better players. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day to watch my video. Good luck with speeds and have a great day. Goodbye.